He was just another face in the crowd on campus, quiet, respectful, a bit older than most of his classmates. By day, he took notes in psychology lectures, blended in during study groups, and worked shifts at the student center. Most people assumed he was a transfer student catching up on life after a detour. They weren't wrong, but they had no idea just how far off they were. What no one saw was the other side of him, the side shaped by years of discipline, sacrifice, and training. A former Marine, honorably discharged after tours in unforgiving parts of the world, he carried his past silently. He didn't need to talk about it. His calm was earned, not learned. One night, while walking back to his off-campus apartment, he heard the roar of engines before he saw the bikes. A group of local bikers had made a habit of cruising through college neighborhoods, revving engines, catcalling, and throwing beer bottles from their saddlebags. Most students just avoided them. It wasn't worth the confrontation. But that night, they crossed a line. A freshman girl, barely 18, was walking just ahead of him. She had earbuds in, not hearing the vulgar comments tossed her way. One of the bikers circled back and got too close, causing her to stumble into the curb. She yanked her headphones out, confused and scared. That's when the Marine stepped in. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't puff up or threaten. He simply stepped between the girl and the biker, his eyes locked, steady and unreadable. "Back off," he said, calm and cold. The biker laughed, then swung. It didn't go how he expected. 3 seconds. That's how long it took. A step, a shift, and the biker was on the ground, gasping, his arm pinned in a hold that felt surgically precise. The others revved their bikes, unsure whether to jump in or bolt. He stood up slowly, looked at each of them. "I've seen worse than you," he said, brushing off his jacket. "Don't let your engine do the talking if you can't back it up." They left without another word. The girl thanked him, her voice shaking. He just nodded and walked on. The next day, word spread, not through gossip, but through whispers, about the quiet guy in psych class who took down a biker with a stare and a single move. He didn't tell anyone what happened. He didn't need to. His story wasn't about revenge, ego, or showing off. It was about stepping up when others stay silent. That's what Marines do, even long after the uniform comes off. The days that followed were strange. People on campus began looking at him differently, not out of fear, but respect. Professors greeted him by name now. Students nodded in passing, like they knew something but weren't sure how to ask. Even the girl he'd helped sent him a coffee with a note that simply said, "Thank you for being there." He didn't crave the attention. If anything, he preferred the background. But something had shifted. For the first time since leaving the Corps, he felt a strange sense of purpose again. Not in combat, not in commands, but in presence. Just being there, being ready. That was enough. One afternoon, while studying at the campus cafe, a student he recognized from his criminal justice class approached him. Nervous at first, the guy finally blurted out, "Are you really a Marine?" He looked up, smiled just a little, and replied, "Once a Marine, always a Marine." That opened a floodgate. Word got around, and slowly, more students started seeking him out, not for fights or drama, but for advice, confidence, even mentorship. He helped one kid train for police academy exams, another write a speech on discipline and sacrifice. He never made it about himself. He just listened, offered guidance, and moved on. Meanwhile, the biker gang didn't show their faces in the neighborhood again. It was like the whole incident erased their presence. Whether out of fear or embarrassment, they vanished into the wind they used to dominate. But the story stuck. People told it like a legend. The quiet Marine who protected the campus like a ghost in plain sight. And though he never asked for it, he became a symbol, not of violence or toughness, but of quiet strength. Of someone who walked among others not as a shadow of who he used to be, but as a protector who never stopped being one. Because even when the war ends, some warriors keep fighting, just in different ways. And sometimes, the strongest people in the room are the ones who say the least, until they need to say everything. One evening, near the end of the semester, he stood at the edge of the campus courtyard, watching students laugh, study, and just exist in the peaceful bubble they took for granted. He smiled to himself, not because of pride, but because he knew he'd helped preserve that peace, even if no one ever really knew the full story. The girl from that night passed by with a group of friends. She caught his eye, gave a small wave, and a genuine smile. He nodded back, then turned and walked toward the setting sun, his backpack slung over one shoulder. No applause, no spotlight, just footsteps fading into the quiet. In the background, stories about him would continue, exaggerated, whispered, shared like folklore. But he didn't care. He wasn't chasing a reputation. He was just a college student, a former Marine, and the kind of man who showed up when it mattered most. Because heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear hoodies, sit quietly in lecture halls, and carry the weight of a past that taught them one thing above all else. Never. Turn your back when someone needs you. And that's how legends are born. Not in glory, but in moments that matter. Graduation came quietly. He walked across the stage like everyone else, his name called, his diploma handed over with a firm handshake. The applause was polite, warm. No one knew the full extent of who he was, what he'd done, or what he'd been through, and he liked it that way. After the ceremony, he stood off to the side, cap in hand, looking out at the sea of families, friends, and futures taking shape. A professor approached him, the same one who once questioned why he never spoke much in class. "You've always been the quiet one," she said with a smile. "But somehow, I feel like we all learned more from you than we ever taught." He gave a small smile back. "Sometimes listening teaches you more than talking ever could." She nodded, then left him with a handshake that felt like respect. That night, as the campus settled down and the stars took their place above the quad, he sat on a bench under an old oak tree, the same bench he'd passed 100 times. He, too, watched the wind move through the branches and felt, for once, a kind of stillness he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't sure what came next. Maybe grad school, maybe something completely different. But he knew one thing for certain. Wherever he went, whatever he did, he'd keep doing what he always did. Standing up when others sat down. Stepping forward when others stepped back. And protecting the peace that so many took for granted. Because once you've seen chaos, you learn to value calm. Once you've faced the worst, you become someone's best defense. And once you've been a warrior, the world never looks the same. He took one last look at the empty courtyard, then walked away. No fanfare, no farewell, just a silent promise in every step. He'd always be ready. Santor.